The first light of dawn in Ouagadougou crept across the palace grounds, soft at first, then quickly transforming the outer walls into a canvas of blazing gold. That quiet majesty lasted only seconds. The rumble of armored engines shattered the morning peace as American Humvees rolled into formation, circling the presidential compound with mechanical precision. Each vehicle kicked up clouds of dust that hung heavy in the air, like restless spirits rising from the red soil. Captain Daniel Rodriguez adjusted the straps of his tactical vest, the thick fabric already sticking to his skin from nervous sweat, though the day had barely begun. Through his binoculars, the flag of Burkina Faso still waved defiantly above the palace, red, white, and green holding their own against the pale, cloudless sky. The sharp thump-thump of helicopter rotors soon joined the chaos, slicing through the air like metallic hawks. The streets around the palace emptied in panic. Vendors abandoned mango baskets and hand-woven cloths, their colorful stalls left half erect as they fled. Dogs barked furiously at the intrusion. Even the massive baobab tree that had stood for centuries near the palace seemed to lean toward the building, a silent guardian bracing against the storm. Inside, President Ibrahim Traoré stood calmly at his office window, his reflection faint in the bulletproof glass. His eyes tracked the foreign troops spreading across his city, their movements precise but alien. He did not flinch. On his desk, the smell of morning tea lingered, a fragile reminder of normalcy already gone. Behind him, portraits of Thomas Sankara and other icons of African liberation looked down, their painted eyes steady and watchful. The door burst open. Aminata, his longtime aide, rushed in, her headscarf twisted from her sprint up 3 flights of stairs. Breathless, she held out a radio receiver hissing with foreign voices. "Mr. President," she whispered, "they demand your surrender, immediately." Traoré's jaw tightened. The arrogance in the broken French coming from the loudspeakers outside carried the same tone his ancestors had endured under colonial rule. A metallic voice boomed across the compound. "President Traoré, you have 30 minutes to surrender yourself for extradition to the United States." The announcement echoed against the walls like a hammer striking iron. Children pressed their faces against the palace gates, confused by the sight of foreign soldiers surrounding their leader's home. Women from the market began arriving too, draped in brilliant cloths, their voices rising in ancestral songs of defiance. From the nearby mosque, the call to prayer merged with chants from the crowd, creating an atmosphere thick with unity and resistance. Even the stray dogs joined, barking furiously at the soldiers' unfamiliar accents and uniforms. Rodriguez checked his watch. 30 minutes. He spoke into his headset, his voice calm but edged with unease. His men had prepared for hostile fire, not for an unarmed population gathering in growing numbers at the palace gates. Old men with walking sticks shuffled forward, carrying decades of history in their scarred faces. Young mothers raised their babies toward the palace as if presenting them for protection. Then came the drums, faint at first, then louder, carried on the wind. Ancient rhythms of war. Rodriguez realized this operation might spiral far beyond anything he had planned. From every street, people converged on the palace. Motorbike taxis abandoned mid-road, their riders now on foot. University students in torn jeans linked arms, their chants recalling uprisings of the past. Women armed with pots and spoons marched with Mama Fatou, a respected vendor whose silver-streaked hair caught the morning light. Their chants carried power, drawing on memory and bloodlines of resistance. Tires burned at intersections. Barricades rose. Even street children, invisible on most days, appeared from alleys, adding their voices to the swelling chorus. The air thickened with smoke, sweat, and the undeniable will of a people. Rodriguez watched through his scope as the crowd ballooned from hundreds to thousands. His comms unit crackled, reports confirmed the same everywhere. Human shields blocking every access point. Elderly women, wrapped in vibrant headscarves, planted themselves directly in front of his lead vehicle. They clasped hands in prayer, their wrinkled faces radiating defiance. Their calm reminded Rodriguez of his grandmother back in Texas. His finger hovered over the transmit button, but froze. How could he order an advance against grandmothers singing lullabies? From the palace balcony, Traoré saw the growing movement with pride and sorrow. Textile workers in bright uniforms formed a semicircle around the gates. Farmers arrived still holding hoes from morning work. Teachers, clerics, and merchants, ordinary citizens who refused to let foreign boots trample their soil, stood shoulder to shoulder. The sight brought tears to his eyes, but he also knew the danger. One shot fired, one spark of panic, and this human shield could turn into a massacre. His chest felt heavy with responsibility. By now, bush taxis arrived overloaded with people. Donkey carts carried families, and the streets swarmed like rivers converging. Thousands, tens of thousands. The soldiers found themselves surrounded by an unarmed army of courage. Sergeant Williams, a 23-year-old from Detroit, stared at a boy no older than his brother. The child waved a tiny flag in one hand, holding a flower in the other. He offered both to the soldier, smiling. Williams felt something inside him break. Around them, the crowd began singing the national anthem. Mouret, French, Dioula, all voices merging in harmony. The sound was overwhelming, more powerful than the helicopters or rifles. Rodriguez felt his orders slipping through his fingers. Firepower meant nothing against a people willing to die standing. His commander's voices grew frantic in his headset, demanding movement. But the captain looked again through his scope at the mothers, the children, the students, the workers, and hesitated. Deep inside the palace, Traoré knelt on a woven mat before an altar adorned with cowrie shells and burning incense. Elder Yamba, the oldest advisor, entered carrying sacred objects passed down for centuries. He placed a wooden mask on the altar, its hollow eyes flickering in candlelight. He whispered, "Your great-grandfather fought with nothing but determination and the ancestors' blessing. Now they call upon you." The room seemed alive. The mask pulsed with light. The chants from outside seeped through the mud-brick walls, blending with Yamba's incantations. Traoré closed his eyes. He saw Sankara smiling, Lumumba's fiery speeches, the unbroken line of African leaders refusing submission. The fear left him, replaced by a river of strength. A sudden gust rattled the shutters. A bird landed on the sill, sang 3 clear notes, then vanished into the sunrise. Yamba's eyes widened. "The ancestors have chosen," he said. Traoré rose. The amulet pressed into his hand, a fragment of meteorite wrapped in gold, a relic that had protected kings for centuries. He felt its weight anchor him. His purpose was clear. When he stepped out of the palace, tens of thousands fell silent. His white robe glowed in the sun. He carried a baobab staff in one hand, a microphone in the other. His voice rolled across the compound. "Captain Rodriguez!" The soldiers jolted. How did he know the commander's name? Traoré's English rang crisp and commanding. "I know why you are here. I know the orders of men who have never walked our soil, but I have a counter-proposal." The crowd leaned in. Rodriguez froze, binoculars fixed. The Pentagon demanded action in his ear, but he hesitated. "I challenge the President of the United States," Traoré declared, "to meet me here in Ouagadougou within 7 days, to debate the future of Africa before the world." The crowd erupted. Gasps rippled through the soldiers. Rodriguez's radio filled with chaos. A single sheet of paper fluttered in Traoré's hand, glowing in the sunlight. Even the dogs felt quiet. The game had changed. Rodriguez kept the binoculars up, but his attention shifted from lines and angles to the man at the microphone. Orders filled his headset. "Move, secure, break the perimeter." The words sounded unreal against the scene in front of him. Mothers shaded infants with scraps of cloth. Students held cardboard signs about dignity and law. Elders sat with open palms and whispered prayers. The city stood as one body. "Sir, instructions?" Williams asked. His eyes stayed on the crowd. Rodriguez said nothing. He measured the cost of one mistake. He saw the tires stacked as barricades. He pictured a burst of panic, a stampede, headlines, funerals, and the call to his own family explaining why children died in a city most viewers could not find on a map. News choppers circled above. Lenses stared down like a second set of eyes. Satellite trucks lined the avenue. Every movement was public now. No edits, no clean exit. Every flinch carried weight. In the command van, a satellite phone blinked. "Washington on the line. Urgent." Rodriguez let it blink. He wanted to hear the street, not slides and euphemisms. He listened to the human noise that tells the truth about danger. On the palace steps, Elder Yamba stood behind the president and felt the air change. The crowd's sound moved from anger to rhythm, a force finding shape. He touched the old staff. The wood felt warm, as if the years stored inside it had awakened. Traoré lifted a paper. He repeated the invitation. 7 days, a public debate, the future of African resources and sovereignty on a table that had never been offered. He spoke of soil, work, price, and respect. He spoke of contracts written far away and paid for in lives here. No shouting, no posture. He sounded like a man with a ledger and a deadline. A vendor's radio crackled. The challenge moved through the crowd, then across neighborhoods, then across borders. In Nairobi, students planned a march. In Accra, lawyers drafted a petition. In Lagos, people gathered with placards for restraint and law. The words changed city to city. The direction was the same. Newsrooms searched for frames, disaster tones, diplomacy tones, old talking points about stability. Viewers pushed back. Images of grandmothers in front of armored grills broke old narratives. The facts were visible. Witnesses were everywhere. In the Pentagon, the room went still as the clip replayed. A debate invitation turned an extraction into a stage. A choice appeared: force or public dialogue. Maps of subsoil deposits and memos on supply chains sat beside talking points about threats. Throats tightened. At state, phones rang without pause. Allies wanted language that would age well. Every label carried risk: law enforcement, support action, counterterrorism, commercial conflict in a security wrapper. Each word could cut the wrong way later. On the avenue, a boy climbed a barrier and waved a small flag. He believed adults would choose sense. His father stood behind him and looked at Rodriguez. The look said what fathers ask of other fathers: choose life over orders that lead to ruin. The satellite phone pressed forward again. Rodriguez pictured his instructors and the spirit of the rules they taught when no one watched. He removed his earpiece and dropped it in the dust. A small sound, a large meaning. "Stand down," he said. Rifles lowered, shoulders eased. Williams exhaled. The captain turned from the van and faced the palace. The crowd's murmur rose into a sound between a cheer and a sob. A line had been crossed in the right direction. Layers formed fast. Abuja called for sovereignty and dialogue. Nairobi marched with drums. Accra scheduled an AU session. Johannesburg lawyers offered pro bono monitoring. Dakar artists started a mural of mothers blocking steel. In London, a crowd held candles. In Paris, posters went up. Dignity is not contraband. In New York, a small rally formed. The slogans were not uniform. They did not need to be. At the gates, a narrow path opened. Rodriguez took off his helmet and walked forward with empty hands. The crowd parted. He stopped a few steps from the president. "My government sent me to take you. I will not do that." Simple words, sharp meaning. The unit pulled to the edge of the square and set a cordon to cool tempers. Soldiers became a buffer instead of a blade. Relief settled over the day. Voices steadied. Children slept on laps. Vendors returned with water and cola. Tickers changed. Headlines softened. Panels added African scholars, organizers, miners, union leaders, engineers, and legal minds. Threads of history entered. So did terms like consent, price, and law. Inside, Aminata drafted the invitation in French, English, and Mori. Place, palace courtyard. Subject, resources, contracts, bases, security. Window, 7 days. Invite, President of the United States. Observers, AU, regional bodies, global media. Format, openers, time replies, closing commitments, or written refusal. Elder Yamba nodded. "You cannot control their answer. You can control your clarity," Traoré signed. Aminata sent. The heat pressed down. The crowd adapted. Tarps for shade. Nurses set up a table. Water passed hand to hand. Imams, priests, and pastors formed a quiet circle and prayed in turn. The quiet held the edges. In the Pentagon, late meetings narrowed to 3 blunt paths: use force and own it on every screen, delay and set a precedent, engage and risk a debate no one could script. At state, lobbyists asked for reassurances. Investors asked for signals. A note about demonstrations slid under a file. The deputy asked for a stance that was firm and flexible. He knew the line was thin. Textile workers began a song. The crowd joined. The pulse kept fatigue from curdling into anger. Night colored the sky like the flag. Rodriguez watched the light fade and felt a weight lift. He had not fixed the politics. He had prevented an irreversible mistake. At dusk, the president repeated the terms. 7 days. Here. Before the world. Then silence. Message sent. The city would hold the line. Across the continent, reaction became planning. Teach-ins. Fact-check hubs. Legal maps for revisiting deals. Short economic threads that translated charts into plain sentences. Posters and songs for rallies and classrooms. In corporate towers, risk memos grew new phrases. Political premium, contract fragility, new price floors. The signals stayed unclear. In a secure facility, an analyst reopened files and compared drafts. Successes turned into accusations by edit. She built a careful record. Not dramatic, precise. She wanted something that would matter later. By midnight, the city surprised outsiders. Shifts of sleep, nurses with elders, clergy rotating, palace staff rotating. Aminata slept on a desk for 2 hours, then returned to the radio. Day 2 brought patience. The square changed shape but did not thin. Food came, trash left, jokes kept spirits up. The city behaved like a body healing without fever. Day 3, the AU convened. Public language stayed careful. Private language was direct. A push for a protocol, regional consultation before bases and long-term extraction deals. The idea was not new. The urgency was. Day 4, continental media passed many foreign outlets in depth. Panels brought the right mix. Miners, chiefs, engineers, scientists, lawyers. The talk moved from slogans to numbers. Day 5, a banner outside a European embassy read, "Trade must be consent, no blame, no absolution, a demand for parity." The photo traveled fast. Day 6, executives met legal teams. Prepare for local processing rules, labor protections, transparency, fair profit shares. Some frowned, some adapted. The smart ones called technical schools. Day 7, the square filled before sunrise. Humvees quiet at the edge, cameras ready. The president spoke the invitation one last time and paused. No plane landed. Absence spoke. He thanked the crowd and the soldiers for restraint. He asked for a slow, orderly dispersal, elders and children first, and to leave the square cleaner than they found it. People obeyed. Order carried its own moral weight. Rodriguez reported the posture, wrote plainly, requested reassignment, resigned when denied, stayed 1 more week to prevent a late misstep, then left quietly. A month later, real working groups formed. Mineral economists, metallurgists, energy planners, port managers, unions, environmental monitors, and community leaders. They read contracts line by line. They mapped renewals and red lines. They designed shared procurement so states would not undercut each other. 3 months later, a draft treaty circulated. No secret side letters, minimum local processing, floor prices tied to a basket, enforceable environmental rules with citizen suits, balanced arbitration forms, reviews, public audits, training pipelines. 6 months later, a Pan-African mining consortium opened in Ouagadougou. Heritage forms, passive cooling, solar on the roof, joint bids, shared risk, a training wing for geology, process engineering, contract law, logistics. Honor the past, build the future. Rodriguez stood at the back in a simple suit. He greeted the gate nurses, the elder who had handed him water, a guard who once mined and now studied at night. Elder Yamba spoke. Choices travel through time. One refusal can cede 10 agreements if rooted in respect. The staff would return to its quiet place. The spirit would move into offices, classrooms, and factories. The next months were not a miracle. They were work, meetings, negotiations, setbacks, wins, strikes when firms cut corners, hearings when thresholds were missed, fines, retraining, watchdogs who stayed awake. Some governments renegotiated. Not all talks worked. Enough did to set precedents. Markets adjusted. The difference was who held the pen. Culture shifted in small ways. Music videos featured engineers. Billboards sold scholarships. Museums told extraction from the community's view. Classrooms debated price formulas with the same energy as pop topics. Press coverage matured. Stories tracked wages, safety, and water as much as tonnage. Local firms got profiles, chiefs and union leaders wrote op-eds, desks assigned reporters who could read a contract, partners recalibrated, intimidation found fewer levers, flattery met requests for offers, those who brought training plans, equipment deals, and clear timelines got meetings, vague talk got smiles and no signatures. Universities and workshops spread skills, ports, logistics, monitoring, coding for mineral tracking, sensors for tailings integrity. Pilots scaled when they worked. Village meetings mattered. A buffer zone protected a creek. Engineers did the math. The company agreed. No trend, real impact. Traoré visited schools. A boy asked if the staff was heavy. He held it with both hands. He promised to grow strong enough to carry it. The president told him to finish homework first. The analyst finished her record. She filed it. The process was slow. She kept her job, lost a few friends, slept better. Companies that adapted did well. Local managers with real authority, training and contracts, public summaries. Fair price and clean streams lowered long-term risk more than short-term savings. Shareholders accepted steadier margins. Companies that refused lost bids. Wrote angry op-eds, filed claims, won short rulings. Lost time. Trucks idled at gates communities now controlled with law and patience. The consortium's first report was plain. Audited figures, tonnage, revenues, community shares, remediation funds, scholarships, training hours, small failures with corrective steps, successes without adjectives, more ore processed locally, more value captured, fewer safety incidents, water monitored with community oversight, radio callers reacted, a clinic saved a cousin, wages on time, boots that fit. Students stayed because math mattered. Water tasted the same as last year, which counted more than any slogan. A shared pricing model balanced global demand and local needs with contingency bands and an environmental reserve funded in high-price cycles. Not perfect, transparent. That changed negotiations. A regional clause required daylight for any foreign base. Publish terms, hold hearings, seek regional review. Not a ban, a light. Weak offers died in that light. Abroad, coverage improved. More African economists, engineers, and artists on panels. Fewer easy stories. In Washington, a memo proposed less blunt tools, joint research on recycling, scholarships with no strings, processing partnerships, listening. Parts of it took root. A European minister said the quiet part: the world needs minerals. The people above them need a fair price in a clean river. Home rules would apply abroad for firms seeking tax perks. Some lobbyists complained, others adapted. On a dusty field, guards trained for mediation, not assault. Apologies, logistics, compensation, chiefs first, sunglasses off. Water carried as respect. Small skills prevented big errors. In Ghana, a symposium keynote came from a community leader, not a consultant. Respect is verifiable, she said. Open ledger tools track community payments. Classroom maps trace mineral paths from ore to device to waste. Students argued where to add value. Ideas were listed for a decade check-in. A startup sensor package turned pressure readings into clear phone alerts. Green to amber and a number to call. The pilot worked and scaled. A song in Dakar told the story of hands, not flags. A producer abroad sold a series on modern African industry. The work lived in routines, bills paid, clinics stocked, roads graded, clean water readings posted. When visitors asked for the square story, the president pointed to 5 lines on a wall chart. Local processing, safety incidents, median wages, water quality, school attendance near operations. He said the lines were the better story. Rodriguez visited once a year. Same avenue, same vendor, Same bench near the baobab. He remembered the sound when fear turned into resolve. Knowing he chose the right line was enough. The boy with the flag learned algebra, code, and the river's names. He learned why his parents sat in front of a vehicle taller than a house. He respected the quiet labor that followed. Nurses trained others. Miners became supervisors. Teachers won grants. Farmers found minnows in clean shallows and showed grandchildren. An analyst read a novel in her garden. An executive retired with fewer enemies. A former lobbyist taught negotiation and liked it. A visitor asked Elder Yamba for a proverb. A river does not shout when it changes course. It moves and the land learns the new shape. On a clear morning, the sun painted the palace walls gold again. Vendors set baskets with practiced hands. Students laughed in uniforms. A soldier nodded to an elder and received a nod back. The routines were the point. A journalist asked for the famous square. The taxi driver laughed. Any square can be famous when people use it well. He pointed to a clinic with a board listing water readings. A delegation came to learn from the consortium. The president handed a packet. Focus on terms and habits, he said. Symbols are symbols. The work is policy and patience. He walked them out, then turned to the charts. Median wages had flattened for 2 quarters. He called the minister. A contractor had slowed hiring. He scheduled a meeting. No rhetoric, a spreadsheet. The day ended without spectacle. Stars came out. The staff leaned where it always did. The city rested. Morning would bring more work. What did the 7-day challenge prove? A soldier can choose conscience without chaos. A crowd can stand firm without rage. A presidency is clear terms and steady follow-through. Ancestral wisdom fits modern contracts when translated into clauses about respect, time, and price. The simplest answer sat on the wall. Dignity measured by wages, safety, clean water, and attendance. Not a slogan. 5 lines moving, slowly and stubbornly in the right direction.